Everyone to this episode of Talent Tuesday live with Leah. Today is Tuesday, May 18th, and I have a very special guest today joining us from Los Angeles. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Katya. I really appreciate you agreeing to do the show with me today. I think that you're going to have a lot of interesting insight to share with us. You've been in this industry in talent acquisition for quite a few years and have done so many amazing different jobs. So I'm excited to hear all about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really, I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. If you are just joining us on LinkedIn Live, on Facebook, on YouTube, I guess. I don't know where all this goes, but if you're just joining us, please go ahead and hit the like button below or give us some engagement there and let us know that where you're watching from. Let us know where you are logging in from in the comments. And I should be able to see them, I believe, here soon. So Katya, thank you again. And I wanted to start this out by you kind of introducing yourself to our audience today, telling just a little bit about yourself, about your background, and why you're in the career that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Katya. I lead all of talent acquisition for Santa Monica-based startup Tiger Connect. We're in the healthcare technology space, and we've had a really amazing past couple of years. In particular with COVID pandemic, we experienced pretty significant growth. And so in my role as senior director TA, I lead all talent acquisition strategy, recruiting activities, employer branding. Since I joined, we've grown company headcount, my team and I, and they're an amazing team of recruiters and a coordinator. I love them. We helped grow headcount by over 40%. So it's been a year and a half of some just really tremendous growth at Tiger Connect. Just last year, we acquired 2 companies, really expanded our offerings within the full cycle of clinical care and collaboration. And, as far as why I'm in talent acquisition, it's been an interesting journey. So I graduated from UCLA. I'm originally from Eastern Europe. I did my master's degree in London, and I speak Russian fluently. And when I was graduating, a recruiter actually reached out to me, one of these like recruiter for recruiters, and said, you're probably looking for a job. And I was. And
yes, I am.
I am indeed looking for a job. And he said, I see that you speak Russian. Would you be interested in doing recruiting? And I didn't really know much about recruiting, but the opportunity was to do recruitment of senior level oil and gas executives in the former Soviet Union from London. Okay. So probably one of the more challenging recruitment environments, if you can imagine. So I think I learned early on in my career about, executive recruiting, overcoming candidate objections, just the real basics, because
you got thrown in like right away, like go straight to the top. Yeah.
In the deep end. And I loved it. I mean, UCLA really prepared me in terms of, my degree program at the International Institute, in terms of working with different cultures, the politics and economics of Eastern Europe. So I had that background, and then doing recruiting and learning the oil and gas industry. I mean, that was a wild ride, for like a 22-year-old.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's like a massive change. Like go from your college experience directly into the world of corporate recruiting, and international corporate recruiting. It wasn't like you were doing entry-level positions.
No, international corporate recruiting, senior executives in Russian.
Well, that is incredibly impressive. I am so happy that we connected on LinkedIn and found each other, and that you're a guest today. I have so many questions to ask you about your experiences at all the different organizations you've worked at, and especially about what you're doing right now. And if you'd like to tell the audience, we have quite a few people that have logged on. Hello to everyone that has logged on so far. And I'm looking at the feed here, so I'm not looking away from you.
No, please, go ahead.
So I wanted you to also tell the audience a little bit more about Tiger Connect and what your organization does. You're a healthcare tech, a startup and kind of what you're doing, and it will give us a better idea about the recruiting that you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's going to sound like a mouthful, but if you're in healthcare, clinical care and collaboration is the business that we're in. So our technology is essentially an app that allows physicians, different types of clinicians, nurses, communicate more easily, just the care teams to be able to collaborate. And if you've if you've ever been to and I think everybody has, right, been in the hospital, how antiquated healthcare is, right? Especially communication, right? It's like, can you fax me this? Like, we'll send you a letter, and it's kind of like, okay, I don't really, this is kind of like time sensitive. And so what Tiger Connect, essentially allows is a HIPAA compliant messaging platform. That's really how it began. But since then, we've expanded into telehealth, particularly in the last year. So our technology also allows physicians to communicate and nurses to communicate with patients, which has been really a big game changer. And if you think about, sort of the ecosystem of clinical care and collaboration, right? There's so many different ways that communication needs to be transferred. And what Tiger Connect does is just makes that communication seamless. And it really matters, when minutes matter, it particularly in terms of saving a life. It integrates with alerts and alarms. So nurse call, it's kind of a highly technical the way that it works. But essentially, it's trusted by over 7,000 organizations.
Wow. Okay. So you guys really have scaled up massively.
Massively. It's been it's been a wild ride, but it's been very exciting. The company's been in business since 2010, but really in the past couple of years, we've experienced this tremendous growth in terms of building out the entire ecosystem of service offerings. And so, from a recruiting perspective, compared to other similar B2B SaaS health tech companies, we recruit the full range, right? Within engineering, that's when our biggest team. So our engineering, our front end, our back end, engineers, mobile, web, across, pretty much every engineering discipline. And then, we also recruit within marketing and sales. And then our client organization, which supports our customers, in terms of making sure that the implementation goes smoothly, that we're here to answer any questions that they might have. And it's a really great team. The thing that I've observed about Tiger Connect is people are genuinely passionate about transforming the way the healthcare industry communicates, and they see the difference that it makes. And whenever we hear customer testimonials, right, about how Tiger Connect was able to impact patient outcomes, that's inspiring.
Right. Well, and that's amazing. So, you guys have really moved into the space of telemedicine now, right? That communicates with not just the doctors within the organization or within their healthcare system, but also to patients. Is that right?
Also to patients. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Expanded into that as well.
Well, so for those of you that are just joining, my guest today is Katya Daniel. Please let us know where you're logging in from today. I want to say hi to Yamani and to Joanne. Thank you guys so much for joining. And if you have any questions about what Katya has already said, or any questions about what we're talking about, please go ahead and drop them in the comments, and either myself or Joanne will get to them. So one of the topics that you wanted to talk about today, that you're passionate about, is creating a good candidate experience when it's all virtual. So all of a sudden we all went to a completely virtual candidate experience. And excuse me, a lot of companies did quite a bit of the candidate acquisition online or digitally prior to the pandemic, but this forced us to go all the way there. So I wanted to get your thoughts on how your organization and what you've experienced and what you've seen in the way of creating the candidate experience basically on Zoom.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is this was one of my main worries when we went remote. Is, we were really proud of our candidate experience, being able to bring people into the office. And we have such a cool space in Santa Monica. There's a rock climbing wall. There's really great collaboration.
In your office?
In our office. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. That's super cool.
So whenever we would, and we expanded our office space right before the pandemic. So, we had this really great energy when people were in the office. And one of my worries was, how are we going to be able to share that with candidates? Are we going to see our metrics for candidate experience go down? It's something that we're a little bit worried about. But one of the ways that we countered that, and we have a really robust recruiting training that we roll out to the business. And I would say that probably the majority, if not the whole organization, is trained on it at this point. But one of the things that we talk to the organization about is how to interview remotely so that it's not awkward, right? And one of the things that we talk to people about is, the things that are so easy in person, right? Picking up on body language, whether someone has questions. It's a little bit more difficult over Zoom. And so when we, did the training to the business, we talked about, some of these really small things that make a difference, right? Like when you're sitting down with the candidate, say, is this still a good time? Do you need a break, right? Do you need a glass of water? And pause, right? Like continuing to pause. And then some of the other things that we did was, we launched a culture guide so that we can show candidates within the process, like, here's our culture. Here's what it's like to be at Tiger Connect. Here's some videos you can watch. Here's how you can read about our values. And then sending them in some links. And we really went all in on employer branding, because without us being able to communicate this in person, we built out our Built in LA page, really showed and invested in having materials there with quotes from within the business, and then, sharing with candidates different articles about highlighting our culture, right? If they can't experience it, what can we share with them on the front end? And the other thing that we do, and this sort of ties into the recruiting process, is, we interview on values. It's something that, we're a very values-driven organization. And we want candidates to know that ahead of time. So sometimes when we're asking kind of unique behavioral questions, a lot of it is about, it's not just about the competencies of whether you can do the job, but whether you're going to be a culture add here. We focus more on culture add versus culture fit. And so I would say, it's really been a few things, like being proactive about training to the business, reinforcing to them what are Zoom interviewing best practices, right? Turn on your video. Right. Don't be typing away the whole time. And
I'm really bad at, I look away a lot, like, because I have screens, and I didn't realize how jarring that can be for somebody that you're talking to, because you think I'm not paying attention, or I'm not looking at you. And it's hard. It is really hard, especially, dogs are barking in the background or whatever. That is extremely difficult to stay like fully engaged and on task during a digital communication.
Oh, 100%. And then I think the other part of it is, having empathy, right? Like, candidates are already nervous. And so they might have a kid running in the background. There might be a dog, a cat might jump on, it's just kind of laughing some of those things off, right? Those things outside of their control. Like they're at home, the family's at home. No one has control over any of that, so I think that maintaining a kind of a sense of humor and a level of empathy for what we're all going through, has a big difference. And so we also do survey candidate experience, and I'm happy to say that we haven't seen a dip in that candidate experience.
Really?
Yeah, throughout the
I can imagine it would be really difficult, because you guys, it sounds like you have a really cool workspace. Like your office environment sounds super fun and engaging and collaborative. And then to all of a sudden not be able to present that to candidates. What were the best ways that you were able to get that message across? You said you provided them some materials. What did you create? Like PowerPoints, videos? What was it that got that message across?
Yeah, so the culture guide that was created essentially is it's a live doc. It's sort of like a PDF, but there's links to videos. There's highlights to leaders in it. So that was one of the things. And then additionally, for those aren't familiar with Built-in, it's a great network. So it's essentially for tech companies in a number of different hubs in the US. There's Built-in LA is who we partner with. And we've been able to, through Built-in LA, we've added pictures of our office, because if people can't see it, right? Pictures of our office.
Right. Yeah.
Our employees. added quotes onto like really built out that page, and then participated in a lot of articles that we interviewed different business leaders to essentially tell the story, right? Getting that information out there from an employer branding perspective. Like, yes, people can go to our website and that's great, and they can learn about the product. That's fantastic. But in terms of learning about the culture, building out that built-in LA page so that candidates can get a really good idea of, what is our culture like? Is it, it's cutting edge, it's visionary, people are passionate, and then seeing some pictures of our office, our employees, and then being able to read articles about like what makes, Tiger Connect who we are, like why we're in the space that we are, what is our vision, what is the mission, and being able to share some of that. And so that's typically what we send to candidates throughout the process. And I think the other part of it is the team of recruiters is just fantastic, right? Like they really make an effort to stay in touch with candidates throughout the process, make sure that they're feeling the love, right? Like we can't meet with them in person. So can we answer any questions for them proactively? Like really figuring out what's important to them and then providing that to them ahead of time.
Okay. No, I wanted to like kind of add to that because that's what, we do in our business. And one of the things that I think a lot of organizations don't realize is that institutional or corporate marketing is incredibly and entirely different than talent acquisition marketing. Totally. You're not going to send a candidate like your Tiger Connect demo. All right. Like, they've probably already done their research on what your organization does and is. What they want to know is behind the scenes. They want to see what it's like to work there. They want to see what the office looks like, what the people, who their colleagues are. And that's something that we've really worked hard on as well. And with our clients, we create a lot of realistic job previews using video. And we do like, short micro clips, and it works incredibly well. We're just wrapping up a very large search for a chief of a large hospital. And what we did is we went in and took video, created very candidate specific video to tell them about the organization, about the budget, how this works. And every candidate that got, moved through, they received those videos via their cell phone, because that's where they're always at, is they're on their cell phone. And I think, we're looking at completely changing the way that we deliver our service to be fully digital, fully mobile, and a little bit more on the recruitment branding and the recruitment attraction piece, because it is so different than getting your institutional marketing department to create something for you. It's a completely different audience.
Completely. Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. It is different. And look, people can go on our website, and I hope that they do, so that they do their research. They can watch they can watch the demo. They already know, they know what the product is, right? They've read the job description. They know what the job is. What they really want to know is what the culture is. Is this where they see themselves being successful? And we do have a unique and a very wonderful values-driven culture, that's really focused on a few core areas. And I think it really defines the way that we do things. And that has to, resonate with someone, because we also want them, it's not about them fitting to our culture, but we also really want them to take a look at the culture and really think about, how can they add value here, right? Are they going to be an addition to the culture? And that's what we also look at. We don't want someone to be just a culture fit. We don't want them to be like everybody else that works here. Like, we want them to bring something, something new, something exciting, and we really focus on bringing in like these bar raisers, right? Who are gonna who are gonna take us to the next level, right? And make a difference. And that's what we try to communicate with candidates ahead of time and throughout the process.
No, and I like that you have cultural fits and culture changers, culture adders. And that's such a cool idea that, somebody that's coming in, they're going to fit, but they're going to bring more. They're going to bring a different perspective or different ideas to our organization. And that's what you're looking for. So I love that. I wanted to see if there was any questions. I'm not getting all of the questions from the chat. So if there are any, if Joanne, you can send me those, that'd be awesome. So I wanted to move into your candidate assessment methodology. That was something that was important to you that you wanted to talk about today. And first, I wanted to know about like your overall view of candidate assessment methodology, and then how it has either stayed the same or changed during our more digital native world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we think about, and I've been fortunate enough to have been at organizations that do a really great job of candidate assessment methodology, and I think being able to take some of those learnings to Tiger Connect and really develop a strategy around it has been great. So when I joined, we essentially rolled out the Tiger Hire process. Tiger Connect, Tiger Hire, and
I like it.
And it's cute. And so I think that when we think about candidate assessment methodology, a lot of companies are sort of like, here's the job. Okay, let's get some people to interview them. And then I guess we'll just see if we move forward. Like that kind of unstructured approach does not work. And not from an equality perspective, right? Like that's not really delivering candidates a fair and transparent process across the board. And when we think about things, especially from a DEI perspective, like it should be structured, and it should be fair to make sure that all candidates are also being assessed equally. And so we are a little bit rigid about it. And I think that it matters. I think that it's important if we are really trying to move the needle in terms of creating opportunity, from a DEI perspective as well. And so what we do from a candidate assessment methodology is from the outset, in the process, right? We have the intake meeting with the manager, and then we have a kickoff meeting with the hiring team to make sure that everybody is aligned on what the profile is. And sometimes they're not. And so that meeting matters, right? Because sometimes people will be like, sometimes people say, I didn't, I don't even really understand why we need this person. And it's like, okay, well then we need to take 5 steps back. But so in that intake meeting and that kickoff meeting, we will assign what are the most important core competencies for each of these positions, right? So from a technical standpoint, from a functional perspective, what is the experience and expertise that they need to bring to the table? And then we also will assign values, like what are the most important values for this level, for this person to demonstrate in order to be successful in this role. And then we have within our applicant tracking system, and we use Greenhouse, which is fantastic.
Yes.
We are very rigid about providing written candidate feedback via scorecards, where each interviewer is assigned certain competencies, certain values that they're going to be assessing on. And we use behavioral interviewing to assess those values. We have a question bank that we have created, and we send to every member of the hiring team so that there's clarity around how to ask questions around some of these values. So if the value is like be human, or if it's own it, how to ask about that, because sometimes what one person thinks is not,
Right. Well, I think that a lot of times, we do this thing, we do something similar where you have like a specific topic or a theme, or something that you want to find out from the candidate, but sometimes it's hard to figure out the questions to ask, and having a question bank is a phenomenal idea. A lot of ATS have them in there, but getting to the correct answer or the correct idea, it can be really hard, rather than just being like, tell me about how human you are. What? I'm a human being. Like, what do you mean? And what you're really asking is probably like, are you empathetic? Tell me about a time when you have used, your soft skills rather than just like your business thinking to create a solution. And it's hard to craft those, and especially for people that don't do it every day. So I think it's absolutely necessary that you have a great talent acquisition team that helps teach the rest of your team how to actually interview people, because there's a lot of bad interviews happening out there, like every day, just really bad.
I mean, it's definitely one of the topics that we cover in our Tiger Hire recruiting workshop that we do with the business. One of the things that we ask is, we communicate to the business about, hey, in case you didn't know, and luckily I would say across the board, people take interviewing and hiring very seriously at Tiger Connect. We try to keep it fun, but people know it's important, and they're really bought in about how to do it the right way, which is, more than half the battle, right? If the business is supportive of what we're doing, then, that's fantastic. And one of the topics though in that workshop is candidate experience. And we share with them some numbers about, when someone has a great candidate experience, even if we don't hire them, they become a promoter. So they'll go share with their family or their network, right? Tiger Connect is great. I have a really good sense of the company. But if they have a bad experience, they will share that. And that gets shared a lot more than positive feedback. I mean, as we all know, right? If you write a review, is it going to be a good one or is it going to be a bad one? Probably a bad one.
You know, that's really interesting that you say that. I have like two things about that. I have made it a point in the past couple of years. We used to travel a lot and whatnot, and I would leave reviews all the time, and good or bad, but I have made a point of leaving good reviews, like when something's truly great, because I realized like I hate getting onto Yelp or in Glassdoor or something, and I'm like, oh, these are really bad. Like I want to know the real story. Like at a restaurant, this was really good, the service was okay, or the drinks were amazing, the food was the ambiance was perfect. Who cares? It's cheap. Go anyway. Like that's what I want to hear. I want to hear realness, not just like your complaints. And I think it's so important on giving that good feedback and creating the chance and the opportunity to provide that good feedback or the good reviews, basically.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and that's exactly, I mean, you're exactly spot on. I mean, I think that we all kind of maybe need to make an effort, especially after the past year that everybody has had, maybe let's focus on the positive for a second, like there's enough negative. Can we focus on some of the good things that are going on? And so, I think that's right. And we've in the trainings, we've asked, one of the things that we ask people joining is we'll say, tell us about a candidate experience story that either you had or someone that you knew had that was horrible. I mean, and there are horror stories. And I think that being aware of that and knowing that, okay, we never want to be one of those horror, like one that needs to have that kind of experience. And I think that luckily we've gotten really great candidate experience feedback. And I think that I think a large part of that is because people are committed. It's not just on the TA team. I think that's the thing that people forget, right? It's hiring well is a business strategy, right? It is not just like a TA strategy that we're,
it has to be a business strategy because your TA absolutely influences the bottom line. And for so long, HR has always been, cost center. Oh, it's just like a function of the business. It doesn't make any money, but it can either generate revenue or it can massively reduce your revenue depending on who you bring on and how your processes work. And I think that we're finally moving into a business ideology where people are recognizing that and realizing that. You're seeing a lot more people move into those CHRO roles. Like finally HR is in the C-suite and it's like the coolest thing ever. And it's been necessary for such a long time. But I think that even smaller organizations are going to start realizing like, oh, wow, the people component of our business is actually like the foundation.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think that you're right. For so long, it was seen as sort of like an administrative support function. And finally now it's being seen as like a true strategic partner that needs a seat at the table. And, particularly within recruiting, I mean, these are, recruiting drives revenue, right? If you don't have the right people, you're not going to meet your business goals. And if you're losing, if you've hired the wrong person, that's detrimental to the business, right? And I think that's why
horrendous. Yeah.
I'm particularly so passionate about candidate assessment and a good recruiting process, because I think especially if you're at a startup or you're a small organization, you can't afford to make the wrong hire, right? It's got to be the right hire. And
so you're totally right. And you were saying, in some of our communication back and forth before we did the show, was you're really passionate also about reducing what you would call like a mishire.
Yes.
And ensuring like those positive candidate and manager experiences, because I mean, you can quantify what a quote unquote mishire would be for an organization, the lost time and productivity, the replacement cost. There is an actual finite cost on hiring somebody and them leaving within the first 90 days. There's a massive financial hit that the organization can take. So I loved your comment that recruiting creates revenue. Is that, I love it. That makes so much sense.
It's absolutely true. I mean, think about it. If especially, regardless of the type of role that you're hiring for, within, let's just say particularly within health tech, right? If you don't have the right salespeople and you don't have the right salespeople to go out and win that business, then you're going to struggle. If you don't have,
you're not going to sell anything.
You're not going to sell anything. But conversely, right, if you don't have the right engineers and you don't have the right engineering team to build that product, then you're not going to have anything to sell, right? So, and that's really the true bottom line. So I think that one of the reasons I like being in recruiting is I think it's incredibly valuable. And I think that people are recognizing that, TA strategy really has a huge impact on the business, and doing it right can make, it's a night and day difference. And when we measure mishires, we actually measure it up to a year. We want to make sure that whoever stays is actually going to be, a fit longer term. And it's mainly for the reason that I mentioned, right? If you're in a smaller company, there's the finite cost of making the wrong hire, right? The impact to the business in terms of reduced productivity or the cost to replace, but then there's also the ripple effect, right? It's disruptive. And that's sort of some of the intangibles, right? If people feel like, okay, well, they came in and now it's this, and then it causes sort of
and it can disrupt processes, cause friction, create challenges in the flow or the workflow. It can create so much chaos and havoc for everybody around that mishire. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. You have to be more precise in your hiring and more successful. And so I'm just so glad that you're here to talk about like the great why recruiting processes are so important. And so I have a couple of questions. I will move on to metrics next, because I know that that's something that you're, really interested in, and as am I. But we have a question from Rawlis, and he said, I noticed that you said a culture add instead of culture fit. What things are you looking to add?
Great question. So anyone who is, familiar, with tech, not necessarily health tech, but, tech gets kind of a bad reputation for not being very diverse, and it's not wrong. It's not necessarily a wrong impression. And so, we want to be different than that. We want to be better than that. Yeah. So instead of hiring, a lot of companies, and it's a human nature thing, right? You want to hire people similar to yourself because you think it'll be easier to work with them. And so,
that same like me bias, I've had that for years, and I have to like consciously work at getting away from it. And I have said before, I just need another Leah. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Who am I to think I'm that great? But it is, it's called the same like me bias, and it's prevalent all over. And that's how you get years and years and years of bankers who look exactly the same, or, your IT people. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's that one's like real. I have done that so many times.
It's so accurate, because it is human nature. It is an unconscious bias. You may be not even aware that you're doing it. And human beings want to do that because they think, it'll be easier. We'll just get each other, and we'll be able to sort of, we'll just get it, and we'll be able to get stuff done really quickly. And it's interesting because it's something that I'm particularly interested in, just from a behavioral psychology perspective, because I, being from Moldova, right, growing up in Eastern Europe, working in a lot of these international locations, I was very rarely like everyone else, right? Okay. So I, in particular, am sort of like, I think that we do ourselves a disservice, because if everyone is the same and everyone thinks the same, it's almost impossible to be innovative, because people are not because if people are similar to you and similar to your background, maybe they grew up where you grew up, or they went to the same schools. And look, I'd love to, I love hiring from UCLA, no issue with that. But, that doesn't mean that we're going to get diverse viewpoints that are going to spark innovation. And everybody knows that if, yes, there might be some sort of like initial, friction, or, okay, well, we don't look at things the same way, but that's good. That's good, because that will spark a dialogue. And then you can both be, people in the room all of a sudden, start being more innovative. Well, that's an interesting viewpoint. I didn't think about it that way. And so when we think about culture add versus culture fit, culture fit is great. Yeah, we want them to sort of, fit into our, existing culture and understand our values. But when we think about culture add, it's diversity of background, diversity of viewpoints, making sure that there's diversity of the people who sit at the table, I think that
yes, I am like fangirling this comment. Yes, this is so great. It's so true. It is absolutely so true.
well, and it's crazy because I think that I'm glad that there's more emphasis on this topic, but I think that for me, like I think back to my oil and gas industry days, right? And this is particularly interesting because people think like, oh, I don't know really if oil and gas is that innovative. I would just agree. I think that like I remember being at a conference in Almaty, Kazakhstan, right? And so that's like on the far corner of the world,
right?
And you're meeting people, and they're from all over the world, right? These expats are there from literally every corner of the world that you can think of, and like I remember thinking, this is really cool. I mean, this is actually, I think, sparking innovation. You have someone from someone from Australia, from South America, from Asia, like, all sort of collaborating on some of these issues. And I remember thinking like, this industry is actually, this is interesting, because they are sort of bringing people in from diverse viewpoints. And yes, I mean, if you think about some, kind of local, smaller companies, if you're thinking about, Texas or East Texas, maybe not so
right.
diverse,
it's very homogenous society, very the same, and it's the same type of organization. But I agree with you. When I worked in oil and gas, I was so pleasantly surprised at the diversity of background and thought, education, like every piece of it, really helped create a really rich culture and a rich environment that we got a ton of stuff done, and we created amazing products and did amazing projects. And but yes, it is one of those industries that you would think like it's not as diverse as it probably should be. And maybe it's that the corporate side isn't as diverse, or management.
Yes. And I think that's, and I think that's spot on. I think that it's, probably, corporate, management, probably depending on where the company's based, right? And what that leadership team looks like. But I remember thinking of, I remember working with actual teams, right? That were made up of so many different viewpoints, so many expats from different parts of the world. Hopefully, we get to the point where that's also reflected in the senior leadership. I mean, I think that that's hopefully the direction that everybody wants to move in. And, more female representation, particularly within that industry.
I do remember that being a big issue for me when I worked in oil and gas. Is I was like, I see a lot of females that work here, but they're all in lower level, entry level support type of roles. That was my experience. Yes. And when I finally started seeing people like me in executive roles and, legal roles or managerial, I was like, okay, there is places here, but by and large, the entirety of the corporate structure was, 90% white male.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my experience. Well, yeah. And I mean, I think it's changing, and I think that that's it's important. And I can see how it would be very similar in the IT world. You have a very small knit community, and you hire the same people over and over and over, just different names and a different social security number, basically.
Exactly. And so I think that, like, particularly within healthcare and being, at a smaller health tech company, smaller companies really have like the opportunity to make a lot of progress in this area, because you have, if you have a small company and people are bought into that, they're going to keep that in mind when they're interviewing. The recruiting team is going to be working on bringing more diverse candidates to the table. And those are really the things that, in my opinion, that move the needle, right? I think it's alignment from the business. And, luckily at Tiger Connect, folks are really passionate about this. And I think that helps. And then you have the recruiting team really making a specific effort, right, in terms of their outreach. And one of the things that we really focus on, we don't really do the whole like post and pray, and we're like, oh, okay, it's out, like hoping people apply. They do, the team does a lot of active outreach and a lot of their own sourcing, with unique search strengths to really bring in diverse talent. And I think that, it's two parts, right? They can be doing that. And then if the business is aligned to the fact that, we need to bring in this diverse the diverse viewpoints, and that's really where it comes together. And, you start to really see improvement, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited to see how you guys continue to grow. I mean, I'll definitely be paying attention and I'm excited. It sounds like you guys have a really awesome plan for growth and continued success.
It's an exciting time.
Yeah.
Exciting, busy time, but we're excited for it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the most valuable TA metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I first learned about recruiting, I didn't start like high level executives like you did. It was like mid-level, mid-career people. And the founder of our company, basically I sat with him for a couple of weeks and he just kind of taught me how to recruit. I didn't ever want to be a recruiter. I didn't want to be in talent acquisition. And so I was kind of like, why am I doing this? What am I doing? But I learned a lot of the methods that he had used for years and years and years. And the metrics that we always measured was applicants, submissions, hires, time to fill.
Mm-hmm.
Are those relevant anymore? And if not, what has replaced them?
Good question. So I think, I have some thoughts about this, and I think,
okay.
What's been interesting is, in my career, I started out in executive recruiting, and the majority of my experience is within executive recruiting. And then I also was able to do sort of senior to mid-level. And then I also, in rounding out my TA experience, have also done contingent recruiting, right? Which is on a contract basis. And I wanted that experience to know the full cycle of all kinds of recruiting that you could possibly have. And so I've gotten exposure to a few different types of metrics, right? Depending on the type of role that you're recruiting on. And so some of the things that we measure, and then I think that is important, is we focus more on, obviously time to fill. Like that's going to be the biggest one. We also measure on if it's filled by the target hire date, right, that the business has set forward, right? Because we do focus on being such close partners to the business, and each hire that we make truly impacts whether it's the roadmap or, our plans for the year. So hiring by the target hire date. We also measure offer acceptance rate. That's, I think, a really, really big one for us, is, because that's how we can get a sense of trends. And particularly within COVID, we've seen a lot, not a lot, but, people are more focused on their family situation, right? And being there for their family, and really, making sure that a move isn't, allows them to have a level of work-life balance where they can really, be there for their family. I think people have realized that, it's the time to really also lean into your family. We
saw that a lot last year too. We also track offer to acceptance ratio, and it plummeted for one of our clients. It's in a more rural area. It usually involves a move for the new hire. They're hiring 40 of these nurses a year. And we saw it just plummet. And they were like, I can't up and move my family across the country. I just can't do it right now. I don't know. My kids aren't in school. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 months. And it was something we definitely didn't expect. It was like out of left field for us. So then we have to increase the number of applicants, because you used to be able to get like 4 applicants to 1 hire. And now we're up to 6 and then 8 and then 12. And we're just bringing in, we're churning through so many people to get to that 1 hire. And it was something that I guess I just was like, it blew me away. Like, oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Nobody wants to make a move. It's not safe.
Well, that's the thing is, I think a lot of people who aren't close within, people operations or HR or TA would be like, oh, but there's more people on the market. And it's like, not necessarily, right? Like,
I see a lot of applications, but
it's also about, whether that people were a lot more discerning about whether that move was going to be the right thing for them and their family, and
absolutely.
Rightfully so. I think that, people really should, and we encourage that, you should be thinking about it. I think that, luckily, being able to offer remote opportunities, has been helpful, so people don't feel like they have to move. The other one that we measure probably sort of ties into this is we also measure what % of our candidates hired came from passive recruitment efforts. We do a lot of effort into sort of, like I said, not posting and praying, but that means you have to go out, you have to do market mapping, you have to be really thoughtful about, who your competitors are in the market, how you can be reaching out to them, identifying whether it's, our competitors or who we think is key talent in the market, and then engaging them, which takes time, right? I think that really top talent is who isn't looking is going to be like, okay, well, sell me on it, right? Like, why do you think I should make this move? And so, but I think that's great. Those are the kind of candidates that we want to be engaging, and also that assists with building our brand as Tiger Connect, right, within the industry. Even if they don't make a move right now, let's keep in touch. Let us know if things change 6 months down the line.
Yeah, and that's building that pipeline for future potential employees, and that's creating those ambassadors, and that's creating those brand champions. Like you said, maybe they didn't get a job here, or maybe they passed on a job, but when somebody asks them about Tiger Connect, they're not going to be like, oh, that place was, whatever. They're going to be like, oh, I had a great experience. I loved it. You should certainly apply. And then 2-3 years down the road, they might come back. So actually, this is something I wanted to ask you about regarding that. What is your thoughts on, remember the days when we did in-person on-site interviews? think back to those days. Okay. So we have, so we're in a situation right now where there's, finalists for a position, and they are doing on-site interviews. Who should be delivering the offer and the declinations, or, telling people that they didn't get the job? What part of the organization does that come from, and who does it come from in your organization?
Yeah, so it's always the recruiters, always on the recruiting side. And I think that from my perspective, it typically should be, because I think that the recruiters are trained in how to manage those candidate relationships. They've been working with the candidate throughout the process. So they've built that relationship. They've built that strong relationship, even if we decide not to move forward, where, it's not just about it being a softer blow, but, I think that, with any type of feedback, good or bad, right, it is always delivered better if there's a foundation there. And if they've built that relationship, I think it tends to, that news is better delivered, whether it's an offer or, apologies,
a rejection
at this time, then better coming from the recruiter.
Would there ever be a time when you would say, somebody without outside of HR, the recruiter should reach out, like high level, you bring them on for interview, to create that continued relationship, say, thank you so much for your time. Or do you think that there's just not really a place for that in the TA world?
Oh, no, I think that's great. We have managers that will do that, especially if it's a high level role, and maybe we didn't move forward in it, not because it had anything to do with them, but maybe we sort of reevaluated the way that we were thinking about that role, and it's not really nothing to do with their background. Yeah, we absolutely will have, managers and executives stay in touch with candidates just for networking purposes. We had one candidate that, actually declined, and we still keep in touch.
No, and that's
all industry.
I would encourage other HR departments, or TA or recruiting people, not to take it so personally. Like when somebody doesn't want to work with your organization, there's obviously a reason behind that, and understand it, and don't burn those bridges. I've worked with some recruiters who are a little too apt, I feel like, to burn bridges. Like, well, they didn't want to work with us, we'll see them later. And I'm like, no, that could be a great candidate for the next job. Keep them 100%. In your life. What are you doing?
Oh, 100%. No, I definitely do not think that it's a good idea to burn those bridges. You should leave on good terms, especially stay in touch if you think that skill set, might be a fit later down the line. And it definitely happens, right? Things change within the business. Even if you didn't move forward now and there was a stronger candidate, who knows if something might not open up later. And also if they declined, things might change, things might change for them.
Rapidly,
I think you have to be empathetic, right? It's not personal. A lot of the time it's not personal. It's not that they don't like the company, or they don't like you, or they don't like whatever. Sometimes it's about the things going on in their life, right? Maybe it's just not the right fit at this moment in time.
No, I think you're totally right. So is there any other metrics that you really look to, like on a daily basis, a weekly basis, to tell you how your team is performing?
Yeah, we also look at, I don't know if I mentioned this already, but we look at pass-through rates. So
No,
pass-through
okay.
rates are essentially when we look at how many candidates came into assessment stage, what percent of those moved on to face-to-face or, final panel interviews, and then what percent of those moved to offer, and then what percent of those offers were accepted. And the reason for that is it gives us a sense of, are the recruiters doing a good job of assessing candidates on the front end? Is the manager then doing a good job of has the manager then, because then we can see if, okay, there's some kind of disconnect there, that maybe the manager.
Where's the breakdown in the process? Are we losing people at this stage or this stage, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And also it gives us a insight into whether there's a disconnect in, like, for example, if there was a lot of candidates assessed, but then the manager didn't move on them, was there some sort of disconnect between the recruiter and the manager? Or maybe the manager didn't quite communicate exactly what they were looking for, but they were like, oh, I'll know it when I see it, or something.
Right.
Like
and
that.
you just brought in 17 candidates and none of them were hired. And you're like, well, we're not getting anywhere with this. We're clearly not communicating. We're not working on the same project here because, we provided people. Yeah. And those are all great metrics to track. And I know that each circumstance or each company, we track different metrics in those that are meaningful to ourselves and to our clients. And one thing that we've done is we'll offer, like, if you want to know that, we can track that for you and we can measure it and we can benchmark it to start and see where we go. This is super interesting. So, I told you that we're doing a lot in the way of candidate attraction and candidate or recruitment marketing. We actually have metrics on how many clicks it takes to get to a hire, right?
Oh.
So how many times, how many people look at the website to get to a submission to a hire? How many, we actually track a lot on the back end as well. How many people are looking at our site on a mobile phone versus a desktop? And most of our clients are like super, super high metrics on mobile phones. So we know that we need to make sure that those applications for every one of our clients are absolutely mobile optimized, because if we don't, we're losing candidates, because we know that out of the 1,500 people that looked at the site, 1,000 of them are on a phone, and if they can't apply, we're losing that opportunity. So we've taken a step back and we have to know from the start, where do these people come from? Are they coming from job boards? Are they coming from LinkedIn, Indeed? Are they actually going to our job page? And so we do a lot on the analytics of the website, actually, and on the ATS itself.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, that's something that maybe we should take a look at as well, because we track source, where are applicants coming from, whether, LinkedIn, Built in LA, Glassdoor, and then, whether they're passively sourced, right? So the candidate has put them into the process. But I think that that's interesting to have some of those insights. There's one other metric that I didn't touch on. I don't know if you've had experience with this as well. We also track quality of hire. And that is sort of a very elusive metric, right? There's a lot of thoughts on, okay, is that time to productivity? Is that, onboarding? Is that kind of initial manager survey? Is that, whether they get promoted down the line, or is it retention? And so we are, I think that that's one that, we're thinking about the best way to measure that. And I think we've got a framework in mind. And initially what we were doing from a candidate quality perspective is a survey was going to the manager, 60 or 90 days in, to essentially ask questions around how are they performing in their role? Are they aligned to the values? How are they collaborating with their team? Because, we have the scorecards in the interviewing process. And so we know how we felt about the candidate. And then we sort of look at, okay, well, now that they're here, are they as great as we thought they were going to be?
Right.
To get a sense of that. Oh, I think
that's interesting. Yeah.
I just saw a question come through.
You're okay. So it says, I may have missed the answer on this. I heard the part about the declination or rejection coming from recruiter. However, if that candidate was on site and interviewing for a C-suite position, does it still come from the recruiter?
Yeah. So for the C-suite positions, it would typically come from the like the lead of talent, or even like the HR leader would be communicating that. So I think like at the C-suite level, depending on, who the recruiter was, but typically at that level, it would be like the head of talent or the head of HR would be involved in the process, and really it would be like at that kind of more leadership level delivering that. I mean, I think that we're not, I think it's something that we have to be flexible on, right? If there's some reasons why, maybe maybe the CEO wants to deliver that news, or, for some reason, like, I think that we're open to that. But I do think that, from a process perspective, it should still come from like the TA or HR leadership.
Right. No, I agree with that. And then Courtney Freeman asked, what are your thoughts on recruiting CRM software, and are there any that you recommend? So customer relationship manager, I've actually seen a little bit of this where people are using CRMs rather than ATS to manage recruiting. I don't know much about it though. So do you?
Yeah, interesting. Yes, I think that there are ATSs that have that CRM functionality. So for example, Greenhouse that we use.
Oh, okay.
And we upgraded to an expert tier that does give us that CRM functionality. And where it's really beneficial is in building candidate pools, candidate pipelines, talent communities. That makes sense. Use that functionality. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's still better to use a great ATS. I think that it has more functionality in terms of like process, reporting, metrics, like it's designed for that. But I think that getting an ATS that maybe has CRM functionality would still allow you to do some of that candidate pipeline management.
So your plug is for Greenhouse. Got it.
I do. It's crazy.
I like them a lot.
So many ATSs. Like I've done Taleo implementations. I think they're good. I think I'm trying to think what other ones, I've used. There's a few really good ones in the market. I think I've been sort of pleasantly, not surprised, but I think I've enjoyed the functionality of Greenhouse, but might be others that are better.
Yeah, there might be. So I wanted to ask you, just to wrap up, a couple real quick fun questions, just quick answers. The first thing that pops into your head, what weird food combination do you really enjoy, or what weird food?
Weird food. Given that I am Russian, I don't know if it's a combination of food, but I definitely really like sauerkraut, pickles, anything pickled.
Oh yeah. That's good. Okay.
Not necessarily a combination. It's just like
right. That's a sauerkraut is, some people would find that weird, but I like it as well. What's the most beautiful beach you've ever been to?
Belize, in Belize.
Okay.
The beaches of Belize are absolutely beautiful, followed very closely by like Carmel, Monterey area. I do love those.
That is gorgeous. Yeah. What current trend, like fashion trend, just makes absolutely no sense to you?
If we start wearing low-rise jeans again, I'm out.
I agree. I agree with you completely. Like that, it's a crime. It should be a crime.
It was not a good idea the first time around. Like, we don't need to go there. Like,
nobody needs to see that.
No one supports this.
Nobody. Oh my gosh. I feel that.
I was reading an article about it and I was like, no.
Right. No. Do you have any TV show, podcast, or book recommendations?
From trying to think, there's like from a professional standpoint and then from a personal.
No, just whatever popped into your mind.
I was a big fan of Homeland and Peaky Blinders. I think were two good shows. My boss actually recommended them. They were really great. And then I'm trying to think. There was something I watched recently. Oh, this is a bit nerdy, but I love The Witcher. Huge fan. Okay. The Witcher on Netflix.
I might have to check that out. Is it scary? I don't like scary stuff.
I don't know.
If I'm going to have a nightmare, it's like, why? This isn't worth it. It's not worth it for me. I need good sleep.
No, it's like kind of fantasy, a little bit funny. Okay. And then I was a really big fan of Altered Carbon. Also, it was a good show. I think I watch a lot of like sci-fi shows. So I think that's another good one.
All right.
But
So,
I
and
actually like need watch recommendations right now. I feel like I've seen.
yeah, if anybody has watch recommendations, I know, I feel like some people are running out because they've been at home for so long. They're like, Netflix, I've watched all of Netflix. I'm done. I need, I've watched all of Hulu, I'm over
Well,
it.
Netflix now has this functionality where they essentially will be like, not sure what to watch, turn on anything. And I'm like, oh, is this the point that we're at? Like,
oh, that's a really sad function. Wow. Okay.
like not sure.
I hope I don't make it there. I really hope.
You've watched everything. And I'm like,
so if somebody that's watching has more questions for you or wants to connect, is the best way to reach you via LinkedIn?
absolutely. Please
Okay.
reach out. I'm passionate about all things TA. Love talking about it. Would love to network and, chat with anyone who might have follow-up questions.
Well, I have so much enjoyed our time today, and I want to have you back on the show, and we can talk about a very specific topic or just everything again. If for those of you that are watching, you're able to earn a SHRM PDC credit. You can get that activity code from Joanne, and she'll pop it in right now, I believe. If you don't see it, let me know, and I will get it to you later. Thank you guys so much for your time today, and we will see you next week on Tuesday.
Thanks for having me. Had so much fun. Bye.
you.
Take care, everyone.
So we stay on for like 1 minute because there's a little bit of a delay. Do you need to run right now too?
No, I have a couple minutes.
Oh, okay. It's just there's a slight delay, and if we hop off, then I think it like takes the cast down. All right. You did so great.
That was so fun.